North Carolina government website crashes after being overwhelmed with requests to homeschool. Let the exodus begin. Bring my children home. I'm Dr. Duke, she's Katie, and let's get on this Dr. Duke show.
What?
Hello everyone, and welcome to the Dr. Duke Show, the only program that keeps you educated on the craziness impacting K-12 classrooms and college campuses around the world. Today we're in a good mood. We're talking about the mass exodus from public school. We talked about this about 3 weeks ago, that this was coming. It looks like it's here, as states like North Carolina report system overloads due to the large number of families looking to pull their kids out of government schools. It's a shame that you actually have to notify these ridiculous schools that you're taking your kid out, but the fact that the internet sites are crashing is wonderful. But first, we always have to begin Friday with Katie's look at the health of our republic.
This week on Healthy Republic, we all know that we're supposed to get our daily servings of our fruits and veggies. But for those of you in New York, I recommend sticking to vegetables because those of you in New York City have been given rotten apples, worm-infested and all. What has happened in that city shows just how bad the rest of the country will soon be. In a ranking of states in the Union, New York sucks. What number ranking that equates to? Who cares? Just know that the rest of the nation suffers because of the stupidity that comes from that state, specifically New York City, a city once known as the Big Apple. Now the priorities of those in charge are just rotten.
When we say, with the help of our First Lady, that we are going to examine every part of this city, every institution, every agency, to identify the institutional racism and tear it down. Yes. We are saying Black Lives Matter in New York City and Black Lives Matter in the United States of America. Let's show Donald Trump what he does not understand. Let's paint it right in front of his building for him. Right. Let's go, everybody.
Yes, Mayor Bill de Blasio, let's go everybody, because painting the words Black Lives Matter on a city street in front of Trump Tower on Fifth Avenue really sticks it to the president, you know? It's so productive of de Blasio because he believes he'll find exactly what he's been searching for.
Found anything yet? Nothing yet, sir. How about you? Not a thing, sir.
I mean, de Blasio could be working on actual ways to stop crime and save lives for real, but instead he'll just keep searching for ways to pander. Does painting a street seem like it's accomplishing anything? Did he find the answer to racism?
We ain't found shit.
And you won't find anything. The so-called mural was partially painted over because if they can paint on the street, why can't someone paint over it? This caused de Blasio to double down and stick it to those other painters via a tweet. To whoever vandalized our mural on Fifth Avenue, nice try. New York City DOT has already fixed it. That's so necessary to do, to waste taxpayers' money. Because as de Blasio said when they first painted the words,
we are not denigrating anything. We are liberating Fifth Avenue. We are uplifting Fifth Avenue. Who built this city? Who built this nation and never got the acknowledgement, the recognition, the compensation? So when we say Black Lives Matter, there is no more American statement. There's no more patriotic statement because there is no America without Black America.
Pander, pander, pander. Of course, Al Sharpton is present, there to take credit for ruining yet another city by stoking racial tensions. With all of the pandering, I guess de Blasio is just relying on the drones to do the actual work in 2020.
The anti-COVID-19 Volunteer Drone Task Force. Please maintain a social distance of at least 6 feet. Again, please maintain social distancing.
We know that police officers are not allowed to do their jobs, and that de Blasio is finding ways to get rid of them altogether. President Trump recently gave an accurate assessment of cities like New York City. Never in history have police been treated so badly as they are in Democrat-run cities, and these cities are a mess. Police must take a stronger stand with the radical left politicians that are treating them so badly and so disrespectfully. This clearly makes Trump racist. If you care about the crime rate and police department's ability to protect the citizens of a city, you so clearly hate black people, and only black people. Because only white people are racist, and all white people are racist. That then means that the leftist politicians get to blame you for everything, while everything minorities do is justified, especially when crime rates are going up. Right, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez?
Well, let's think about it. Do we think this has to do with the fact that there's record unemployment in the United States right now? The fact that people are at a level of economic desperation that we have not seen since the Great Recession? Maybe this has to do with the fact that people aren't paying their rent and are scared to pay their rent. And so they go out and they need to feed their child and they don't have money. So you maybe have to, they're put in a position where they feel like they either need to shoplift some bread or go hungry that night.
She's gone from suck to blow. What?
Blow hard, to be exact. It's what she does. You see, what's happening is AOC just wants to follow her mentor, the ever-Marxist comrade Bernie Sanders, in having those bread lines formed, where everyone will be together. Those lines will be organized, united, equal.
The what? The what? And the what?
Exactly. Listen, we don't need the police. AOC has it covered with the goodness of strangers.
First and foremost, I don't have police protection. I never have. I don't have a personal detail or anything like that. And my community looks out for me.
That same community, on the same day that AOC justified the crime happening in the city, had a 1-year-old baby boy killed after gunfire from an apparent shootout in front of a playground in Brooklyn. That same night in New York City, 2 other boys were injured by gunshots.
Everybody talk about Black Lives Matter. What about baby lives? What about teenager lives? Like, you took an innocent child from a mother and a father, as well as the grandparents.
And it's not just the politicians who are this awful and not really caring about actual people. Really, if you live in New York City, you know.
I knew it. I'm surrounded by assholes.
Yo, if you feel like Dark Helmet, then you are not alone. You probably feel like Tom Rockledge, a member of the New York City District 2 Community Education Council. He was blasted, and I mean blasted, during an online council meeting simply for holding his friend's baby on his lap. And because the baby is black, somehow that makes Rockledge, a white man, racist. Watch and cringe.
It hurts people when they see a white man bouncing a brown baby on their lap and they don't know the context. That is harmful. And I'm not trying to be a martyr. I'm trying to illustrate to you that you think you think I'm a social justice warrior and you think I'm being patronizing and I'm getting pressure for not being enough of an advocate. And I take that to heart and that hurts me. And I have to learn to make how to be a better white person.
She be crazy, but she's not done.
And we should apologize when we offend people of color, when they get upset, when they say this is a harmful space, when they log out of a meeting immediately because they see white people exhibiting their power over people of color.
That power over a baby. Now, I don't want to be all doom and gloom. There is one good thing coming out of New York City. Aside from the pizza and Mel Brooks, who made the wonderful Spaceballs movie that you've been seeing clips from. Barry Weiss, a New York Times opinion writer, just gave it her all in a resignation letter for the ages. In the letter to publisher A.G. Sulzberger, Weiss said that when she was hired 3 years ago, the paper was supposed to give voice to first-time writers, centrists, and conservatives. Oh, naive Barry at believing that. Attacking the reality of Twitter, she said, Twitter is not on the masthead of the New York Times, but Twitter has become its ultimate editor. As the ethics and mores of that platform have become those of the paper itself has increasingly become a kind of performance space. Stories are chosen and told in a way to satisfy the narrowest of audiences rather than to allow a curious public to read about the world and then draw their own conclusions. She continued, my own forays into wrongthink have made me the subject of constant bullying by colleagues who disagree with my views. They have called me a Nazi and a racist. I have learned to brush off comments about how I'm writing about the Jews again. Go read the entire letter because it deserves a Pulitzer. But I know they reserve those for ahistorical leftists like Nicole Hannah-Jones and her 1619 BS project. She's the same woman who has basically taken over the New York Times. Full circle. I didn't even have time to talk about how awful Governor Andrew Cuomo has been. If I attempted, we'd be here all day. But let me know in the comments if you want me to trudge through all of his waste of space actions. Let me close on this. New York is not unique in its leftist regime takeover. It's a metropolis of Democratic politicians who insist they care about those they represent. And the reality is, they don't represent anyone but themselves. For anyone living in New York City, and all big cities, all I can say is, may the Schwartz be with you. Until next time, stay healthy, America.
Joined by Alex Newman today, our international correspondent. Alex, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Duke. Great to be with you.
Well, it seems that parents in this country, even pre-COVID, even when things were calm and placid, there weren't lunatics in the street burning things down, they always wait until after the 4th of July to get serious about what's going on with their kids' schooling in the fall. So we would have expected after the 4th of July holiday that a lot of parents being very concerned about whether or not their public schools are going to open, whether or not the teachers are going to show up, what kind of protocols these young kids are going to have to go through, to the surprise of really nobody. Looks like that this mass exodus to homeschooling, like we predicted about a month and a half ago, is beginning to materialize. Talk about what's going on in your latest story in North Carolina with regards to homeschooling.
Yeah, thank you, Duke. So what happened in North Carolina was really interesting. Their government website actually got overloaded, the one where you file, they call it a notice of intent to establish a homeschool, I think is how they refer to it in North Carolina. So basically, when you want to start homeschooling, you send the government a letter, and the place to get that form actually had so many requests that they had to shut it down. It got overloaded and crashed, and they put a note up there saying, sorry, there's too much volume of requests right now, so please check back later. We're trying to get this back up and running as soon as possible. So that's one of many signs and symptoms we're seeing across the country. I also talked about Texas, where some of the school districts in the Houston area were doing surveys of families. And what they found was in a lot of these districts, fully half of the families are not planning to send their children back when schools reopen in the fall. So, there's going to be a catastrophe for the public education system. They're scrambling now, trying to get, everybody laptops so that they can all keep them plugged into the government machinery. But a lot of these families are just going to pull their kids out and do regular old homeschooling, free of government interference. So this is a very, very good sign, Duke.
Well, you and I have both dealt with public schools long enough to know that you can't take them at face value. What do you think the odds are that in North Carolina, they did really run out of bandwidth, or they just shut the machine off because they didn't want to issue more permits for parents to homeschool their kids?
That's entirely possible, Duke. And, we did an article at FreedomProject for the Newman Report not too long ago about government bureaucrats in multiple states trying to keep the children trapped in the school. So they were saying, oh, you can't withdraw during COVID, or, oh, sorry, we're not processing a notice of intent to file for homeschool right now, coming up with all kinds of excuses for why families could not cut the ties with the government indoctrination system. And that may well be what we're seeing here, because, they recognize every butt in a chair means more state funding, means more federal funding per student. And so, as they see families fleeing from the system, they're saying, oh my goodness. And even here in the county where I live, actually, we got for the first time ever these postcards from the school district saying, oh, please join, the government virtual school thing. It'll be kind of like homeschooling, and we'll give you a free laptop. And, I don't know how many homeschool families took the cheese in the mousetrap, but we shall see. So
it's like those old game shows where you used to get parting gifts. Maybe all of these homeschool moms ought to send rice-a-roni to the public schools and say, here's your parting gift. We're out of here. And there's really good reason to do so. I mean, look what's happening in New York. New York's began their online summer program. 36% of kids haven't even bothered to sign in, and it's a month into it. So the kids aren't going to school. How about what's happening in Los Angeles? This is the one that gets me. The teachers' unions in Los Angeles, one of the lowest performing cities in the entire country, they can't educate anybody. The teachers' unions have now come out and said, well, we'll teach in the fall if you defund the police in Los Angeles and if you stop funding charter schools. So in other words, we union teachers will show up and do our jobs if you defund all the police and you kill all of our competition.
It's so typical of what we see with the government education monopoly, Duke. And, you and I have a mutual friend, Rebecca Friedrichs, who fought these people all the way up to the Supreme Court and won. But, the unions are a huge part of the problem. It's this whole system. It's like a hydra with the unions are one tentacle, and the education establishment, and then all the people profiting, all the crony capitalists selling a bunch of garbage to the schools and new textbooks filled with garbage. And it's this huge $1 trillion industry, and they're not going to go quietly. I mean, they're not going to go out without a fight, realizing that all their victims are escaping through their clutches. That means all their money is going to be escaping through their clutches, and so I think they're in panic mode right now. They're frantically trying to come up with anything and everything to keep these kids stuck there, but I don't think it's going to work.
Well, after what we've seen, this American public school system is driven by the money and the comfort level of teachers and professional educrats, not about kids. They failed to educate for decades now, and there have been no consequences. The consequences are here. After the break, let's talk about some opportunities for parents to get their kids out. All right, back again with Alex Newman, our international correspondent. And we've been talking about the exodus that is apparently going on away from public school and towards homeschooling. Talked about what's going on in North Carolina, where the server broke because there was so much interest in possibly pulling their kids out. We've talked about the fecklessness of these schools, these public schools that have done a lousy job of educating your kids for at least 3 decades, and they never seem to feel any consequences. Well, the consequences may be upon them finally. We have an organization that we have recently just christened. You and I are 2 of the 4 founding members, Alex. It's called Public School Exit. Talk briefly about the other 2 members and talk briefly about the mission of Public School Exit.
So, yeah, it's you and I, and then the other 2 members, wonderful, wonderful people, is Lieutenant Colonel E. Ray Moore, who we actually did a whole interview with for the special report we did on rescuing our children that you and I collaborated on. He's kind of one of the founding fathers of this movement, really. Back over 20 years ago, he figured out that the schools could not be reformed. They were just a disaster. So he said, we got to get the kids out, especially, he's a Christian, he's a pastor, so he focused on getting the Christian children out of the public schools. But he recognizes that it's not just Christian children who need a proper education. Everybody does. And so, we're kind of broadening this now, trying to get all children out of the school system. The other is Dran Reese, the founder of the Salt and Light Council, amazing woman. Really one of the kind of the doers, right, who actually gets things done. So the goal of the organization is, as the name implies, to get as many children to exit the public schools as possible. So we're providing resources, information, ideas, instructions, different options people can look at. So a lot's happening now. I mean, the organization hasn't been online for all that long, but we're already seeing a huge amount of interest. Now we're doing weekly seminars to try to help parents make the right decision. Once they've made the right decision, to help kind of shepherd them into the homeschool community or into the private school community outside of government control. It's a lot of work, but it's incredibly important. In fact, I can't think of very many things more important than liberating as many children as possible from this harmful indoctrination and sexualization.
Tell parents where they can go to view the website and maybe support the cause.
Yeah, that's at publicschoolexit.com. If you go there, you'll see all the buttons. If you want to know legal status in your state, if you want to help fund getting a student out of public schools, all the different things you could want, reasons why you might want to get your children out of public schools, you can send that to your neighbor or your son or daughter who's got your grandchildren at home. Lots of stuff there, and that's publicschoolexit.com.
And here at Freedom Project, we are an online school where we do all the education with live teachers. We bring it right into your living room. No drugs, no sexual education, no school shooters. And we're enrolling for the next 2.5 weeks, 2 to 2.5 weeks. So if you're thinking about getting your kids into a school online that is a really good school, or you want some help with homeschooling, check out Freedom Project for the next couple weeks. And the thing about us is that we too are experiencing it's just a huge number. We can't even keep up with the placement exams. They're coming in so fast. So parents are beginning to do the right thing. And we've heard from a lot of public school parents that, look, if we're going to send our kids to online schools in the fall because of COVID, we'd rather have you do it, who are professional online educators, than to have these public schools that are completely clueless about how to do this, teachers who are unwilling to do it, all the other junk. We saw last week, we talked about how in California, they can't get kids to sign up. They can't get kids to go online. The online public school system is failing in Los Angeles, and yet they're still demanding, the state's mandating, that you still have to teach kids the radical sexual politics, right? So at Freedom Project, and you've been part of Freedom Project for a long time now, we've been doing this successfully, and so if you have a chance, take a look at what we're doing.
Yeah, Freedom Project is an amazing school. In fact, I think I was the first teacher hired by Freedom Project. So it's great to still be with this school. Amazing students, amazing teachers, amazing programs. So for parents who are looking for some support, who don't want to do all the homeschooling themselves, but who don't want their children to be indoctrinated and sexualized and dumbed down and taught to hate America, as President Trump quite correctly pointed out in his recent speech at Mount Rushmore, Freedom Project is an amazing option. I highly recommend that people go check it out. Obviously, FPEUSA.org, Freedom Project Media, what we're on right now. It's, of course, an affiliate of the Freedom Project Academy. Great option for parents who want some help educating their children, really with godly values, with godly instruction, and also with legitimate education, with phonics and real history and real science. I mean, that's what people need, and Freedom Project is a great place to get it.
Hey, Mom and Dad, how would you like to have your kid be a high school kid with Freedom Project and have Alex Newman as their advanced economics teacher? That right there is worth the price of admission.
It's time now for some real education. Max Beckmann's 1917 Cubist painting, Descent from the Cross, offers an unflinching look at bodily suffering, a timely topic for a painting made during the bloody years of World War I. The image can be witnessed through multiple perspectives that draw focus to Jesus' oversized corpse, his pale flesh covered in bruises and sores, and the coagulated blood pooling around the holes of the stigmata. His outstretched arms and their rigor mortis mirror the shape of the cross. Beckmann possibly painted this picture to answer a challenge posed by Gustav Hartmann to create a modern work of art as powerful as those from medieval German art.
And this picture was actually recommended to us by one of our viewers, somebody who likes to recommend things. We encourage you to keep doing this. This is Alexander Kelly of Concord, North Carolina. So we want to thank you for recommending this. And anybody out there in the listening land of the vast and diverse Dr. Duke Show audience, if you'd like us to consider doing something for Instant Classic, just send us a note. And we thank again Alexander Kelly. And so we have this image here, the Descent of the Cross, and it is really a remarkable image. And if you look at it, and we've done a number of images like this from the World War I period. We've already done a couple of poems and a couple of pictures from this area. Most notably, we have recently talked about Marc Chagall's paintings of crucifixes. Chagall, of course, was an exiled Jew from Russia. Here you have a situation where you have Max Beckmann, right about the time, 1916, 1970, the World War I was wrapping down, the bloodiest conflict, I think still, in the history of the world, World War I, the most brutal kind of warfare. It was the beginning of the technological age of warfare. Tanks had been invented, mustard gas was being used, machine guns had been invented. And so many of the artists of that time, whether they were Russian or in this case German, had the same thing in their minds, just how bloody and how brutal the modern world had become. And if you go back and take a look at the picture again, why wouldn't Jesus be the perfect image of that? Now again, this is a distorted cubist. It's a painting that is cubist, but not full onset cubism, if I may phrase it that way. But if you take a look at the body of Christ there, in some ways the body of Christ represents the medieval skeleton, the Grim Reaper. You can see here that it's almost as if the body of Christ is morphed into what the Middle Ages would use as that skeletal figure with the scythe that would go around mowing people down. Christ has become not just a savior, and it begs the question. Notice that he's been taken down from the cross, but that his arms are still spread out as if he were on the cross. And one of the points that I think Beckmann is beginning to make here in the kind of godlessness that gave us World War I. Remember, you had headlines in the newspapers that God is dead right at the beginning of this war, that God is dead, the world is at war. And you think about the random carnage, the incredible horrors of trench warfare, the kind of dying that took place. And almost an entire generation of young men in Europe had been eradicated by this war. And if you go back to the image, you look at it again, this is a picture of, this Christ could be picked not just off the cross, he could be picked up from a bunker or a trench. This is a Christ who, for World War II, as we lumbered on towards that, this is a Christ that could be removed from a concentration camp. This is a Christ who represents the horrors of what people do to other people. And if you look, this is an odd descent, right? If you think about the great descent of the cross, perhaps the most beautiful one ever done was Peter Paul Rubens' Descent from the Cross, maybe his masterpiece. You think about how that culture 300 years earlier figured the act of taking Christ from the cross, and you look at how he's been taken down here. Another interesting point about the picture, it's as if rigor mortis has set in. In other words, Christ is frozen physically in the way that he was brutalized and crucified. This is not a painting that is meant to suggest that this Christ will get up and fix these problems. This is in many ways a capitulatory picture of Christ, that we've got all the suffering, and no doubt that Christ, who suffered perhaps more than anybody who ever lived, that suffering here is reified in what's taking place in the war. And so really interesting pictures. And so Alexander Kelly of Concord, North Carolina, I hope we, in 4.5 minutes, did a little bit of justice to that. I'll keep recommending pictures. Everybody else, send us your ideas for Instant Classic as well.
All right, as always, you can follow us on Facebook and Parler. And if you have a question for our Friday Q&A, visit freedomproject.com/askduke or send us a message on the social media. As a reminder, Freedom Project Academy's live online school is enrolling new students for just one more week. Here's a quick message from FPA's principal, Mr. Harper.
Hi, I'm Dave Harper, principal of Freedom Project Academy. Here at FPA, we have been engaging students in high-quality online instruction through a classical curriculum for 10 years. We use sophisticated interactive software designed for teaching online that is very user-friendly and fosters student participation in our live classes, not like Google Hangouts or Zoom meetings. Our outstanding instructors publish weekly assignment sheets, homework, and assessments in our learning management system that are easily accessible from a student's or parent's computer to any mobile device. We always encourage parents to be involved in their child's education and make everything available for them to see, including class instruction. We hope you'll consider joining us this fall and experience for yourself the phenomenal learning activities and engaging online environment our teachers create for students. For enrollment information, visit fpeusa.org. That's fpeusa.org.
Now get your students in quick because our phones are ringing off the hooks. I was actually on the phone the other day for 50 minutes talking to parents, answering questions, making sure they understand what it is that we do here at FPA. So make sure you get our free information packet at freedomforschool.com. That's freedom, F-O-R, school.com. Now we're going to wrap things up with our fun fact of the day. In New York City, it is illegal to honk your horn, but it is not illegal to go topless. But it is illegal to fart during a church service or a funeral.
Where are we on the legality of taking relatively healthy people and stuffing them into nursing homes to die? Where is that in the whole collection of New York insanity? Anyway, that's going to do it for us this week. For Freedom Project, I'm Dr. Duke. She's Katie. Until next time, stay educated, my friends.